Right, so this is where I am at the moment, and I thought I'd get a couple of these little Big Men Studio spare transfers here, just to see what I think of these being applied. So take the top layer off. Let's see what this looks like in terms of the overall size on here. Actually, weirdly, that's quite a good match there. And this is just illustrating what I've done before in terms of trying to get a piece of paper and actually helping to highlight the area that we're interested in. Normally I've done it with a very, very thin piece of paper, but here I think this one will be a little bit larger. And the way these work, as I'm sure you've seen before, just add a bit of water to the surface, and after a little while they peel off. Now you can see here, let's just wait for that one, because I didn't have white underneath, I had red. You've really lost the shield there, but basically I don't know if you can see it, but I can see a nice little line now where I can follow to try and get us that more defined round outline. So just as a bit of a mix, I'm going to leave those like that to join in with the rest of them. Then whilst that's all sort of drying, and hopefully I'm able to rectify what is quite honestly quite a disappointing start, we're going to do the 6 full-size ones and start marking out some shapes on the white background. And I'm going to use the black for that. So I'm going to return to my overall designs that we're trying to achieve. I'm going to start with something, well, let's start with something fairly simplistic. Let's start with the cup here. And when I take a little look at the measurements on this one, if we go into the inner section, that's a 20mm wide picture here that we've got. And I think it will be, yeah. So again, important to get the central line, but then when I look at this one in the center, we're looking at approximately a 6mm wide top cup, and that is 5mm from the top. That's a quarter from the top and sort of 6 out of 12, sorry, 6 out of 20 on the inside. Now we don't have to follow these measurements religiously or to the letter, but if we go for my shield being approximately 12mm in the inner center, then I want to come in 1, 2, 3 to about there for the start of the cup. So again, we'll do something like that. As long as we fix a point down here, and just for convenience here, I'm going to go 4mm down, and then I'm going to draw my end point two up. Sorry, I think 3 up actually. We'll come back and do that a bit later. So let's paint that in there. Let's paint that across there. And again, we just want to be even with this thing, so we just want to get a balance. So that's my center point. If I go out to about here, that might be a bit too much actually. Let's go about there, about there. Just for convenience, what I'm going to do is draw a line to the center point so that we start to create a bit of an hourglass effect. As you can see, I'm no painter here. But we are starting to get an approximation of a cup. Which I've just realised was one of those that I've marked as being inside the red. But never mind, we can always switch this around. And this is quite a high sort of handle effect here. So let's just try and see what that looks like if I was to put that on. Oh, we can see at the angle I'm at here that that's completely wrong. And actually too thick. But the good thing about this stage is that everything is recoverable. So what I'm going to do is actually water this black paint down, because part of the problem I'm having is that we're getting a bit of traction when I'm trying to put in the initial outline of these shapes, and that's not being helped by paint that is starting to dry. It may not seem like it, but I've got quite a few lights running here, and I don't think that's helping. So let's actually leave that one for the time being as a rough shape. Come back and look at one of the ones that we said we were going to do some full sizes on. So we're going to do a Gorgon face. So again, this is the sort of shape that we're going for. But actually, sorry, excuse me, there you go. What I'm thinking is I've got a slightly larger rendering, which is a slightly more cartoonish style. But it's this one on the slightly larger piece of paper. So I'm going to try and do something similar to that, that includes some of the elements of this one down here. Excuse me, let's get rid of this. Picked up some bronze. But in any event, we need to look at where some of the sort of features are in terms of the overall relationship to the shield. So again, going back to this one, you've obviously got a nose in the center point. And actually, it starts from the center point up. So we can probably safely make this a bit more usable now. Normally what I try and have is a very sort of washy, weak black, and I think I've gone way too dark in this particular example. Then we've got a sort of eye level there. Under here we've got a mouth section. You can see how much easier it is with this thinner mix to not cause yourself too many problems in terms of outlining where we want some of these features to be. And we've got this sort of slightly strange bulge effect on the side on this particular model, or sorry, image. But if we go under here and start putting a frame to the overall effect, we're starting to get something which has a bit of potential. And we'll go up here and just do that sort of section. You can see that this hair here is a bit squirrely. So what I'm doing is sort of creating my own sort of interpretation of this thing here. I'll make the nose a bit bigger. And I think we just take that a little bit higher because it sort of joins in with the head, and then we've got our eye just below it in that sort of area, and that sort of joins down into there. So when we come back to this with a bit of flesh colour, we'll have to just make sure that we are aware of that. We've got our eye section there. Okay, it's not quite straight. Let's try and rectify that while we're here. Okay, so as a start for 10, we're starting to get a sort of shape going on there. We need to raise that a little bit. I'm going to come back into there with some of the ear. This figure, and they commonly had the tongue stuck out, so that's not something I'm going to miss. So we're going to do that, and then these have teeth, so we'll start to put some of those in. So yeah, you can see it building up now. What I need to do is decide whether to keep the background white, but what I'm going to do on that one, just give that a little moment to dry, and then have a little go with a flesh undercoat and see what we can achieve with that. So I'm a bit disappointed with that one. That's my fault. Little tip: do not make this too thick. Certainly not in the early stages, because we're going to try and be very light with the black and make sure that we're getting a good representation of the image that we're trying to follow. So let's do another full size one. I had this bird down as a full size one. Again, a little bit of a sanity check in terms of measurements. It doesn't actually have an equidistant, well, it doesn't appear to be. So the body is slightly below the centre line. I don't know if I want to keep that or not, but obviously we've got the head a little bit ahead of the body, as it were. But if we look at this centre line here, again, it's not necessarily easy to see with all this light here, but this part here is where the centre line is, and then everything is forward of that. So let's take one of these guys here. Yeah, that really does look bad, doesn't it? We'll have to come back and sort that one out. But if we assume that the centre line for the wings is going to be about there, what we want to do is make sure that we've got the right angle. So we're going to have a head here of some description. I'm sure there's art students out there, if you're ever watching this, thinking, what is this guy doing? But actually, part of the fun is seeing how well you can do this, or it is for me anyway. And if I can achieve anything like a decent result with an artistic, shall we say, approximation, then I'll be very happy. And just to reiterate, this is just sketching out a line, thinking about where we might want to be with the overall shape. And I tend to go for black because we're going to put some colour on top of it. And when we come back with these sort of lines that I'm drawing there, you know, hopefully that will give us the differentiation that we're looking for to create that overall bird shape. At the end of the day, you know, there's plenty of transfers out there. So if this is not your thing, then you're absolutely entitled to make the most of what's available and steer well clear of this in terms of effort. But you know, why not give it a go and create something unique that nobody else has got on their shields? Now I can tell the problem already is that this is looking very unbird-like because we've got that sort of odd shape there. So what I'm going to do, I think we've got too much black there. We're going to again leave that one to dry as a terrible shape to start with, and see what happens when I put a colour on to actually start bringing out the bird, as it were. A couple more to go. I've got this bull's head here. So again, we've got our centre line. I'm going to just run down that centre line just to reinforce where I think that should be. At the top, we've got a flattening out here. So again, let's try and put that in. This has sort of horns that go off slightly at an angle, like that, and then come back down and come round. So we'll come back to this. And sorry, if I've got any excuses, it's because I'm trying to do this at a bit of an angle, but I think I'm blocking all of what you guys can see here anyway. So I'm just trying to get some sort of approximation of the shape for these horns. And I tend to do this, and then once I get a rough guide in place, then I put start to put the top coats on and start to create something which is a bit more realistic. And this is just about a structure for me to work with. And you probably can't tell, but the paint is already starting to dry in a quite annoying manner. So we need to go out there a bit and back in there a bit more. So again, it's looking pretty rough, but we're just at this stage sketching out. Like that, put a bit more water in on that. Clean the brush again. Go back to my designs. Oh, not. Helps if you don't knock them off the tabletop. So we're going to go back to a boar design now. And that was one of these larger designs here. So I'm going to keep that in the background as a bit of reference and pick up one of the other ones. Again, try and keep this nice and watery. And it's got this sort of curvature to it. It's got an underneath portion there. Let's try and do that with a sort of leg section there. That. And to be honest, this is about the perfect sort of medium in terms of the way that I've got this watery effect now, because I want it to be enough that you can see it, but obviously not enough to create these great big blodgy bits here that I did earlier. And if it waters into the, sorry, if it runs into the section after I'm a bit happy with life, then so be it. And I think the only thing I've done wrong there is I've really not got good rendering of that front portion. I think that front leg is too far forward, so we'll be losing that one shortly. But that's enough for that stage. We're just getting a rough outline of what we're interested in. So I've got one more to try and do, which I think was the wreath. Like I said, was going to be a full size one. And this is a little bit different because we want to be taking note of our centre line, but we can almost ignore it. And then we're going to be going around there. And we're going to be coming back on ourselves in some sort of great big circle. So what I tend to do with this, and I've painted these before, is put a very, very approximate circle in play. Again, nice watery, weak background. But actually what we're going to come and do on top of this is just use this as a core and then go around it with a few leaves. So that's pretty horrific at this stage, I think, if you if you're an artist. So apologies for that, but it can only get better from here. And I'm just trying to see whether these designs work. So, and it wouldn't be much of a video if I just presented the finished article, because I really do want people to realise that although maybe there's no shortcuts to this that I can think of, it's perfectly practical to get some decent results on your own without spending too much time and effort on it. But I'm going to let those dry and then come back to it and show you how I start to pull the shields together. Okay, welcome back. Apologies for, I think on the last set of videos it was really hard to see what I was doing because of the position of the camera. This is how far I've got so far. So these are very, very roughly sketched out, as you can see. I mean, this boar here has got 3 legs because I didn't like the position of the legs the first time around. You can see that this is just not right. But I've left them there, warts and all, so that you can see how all you need really is a framework to work from, and then you can create some really nice looking shields. So what I thought I'd do is just take this one down here and give you a little bit more of a view as to how you can construct the shield. And this time I'm going to be much more aware of where I am video wise. So I'm just going to get a small piece of a small amount of fairly runny black, pop it in here. We'll mark out the dimensions of the shield, and then I've decided to do a flying horse. Bellerophon or similar, that would have been a fairly common shield device. I'll retrieve my reference material shortly, but the first thing to do is prep this with a little bit of, as I say, fairly runny black paint, and then we'll be back shortly. Okay, so here we go. We're going to take this shield, just for convenience, mark out a little center point. I think I showed you before, it's very roughly about 1.2 centimeters or 12 millimeters. Sorry, yeah. Let's just twist that round so you can see it a bit more. Hopefully that's just very faintly there. We'll do the same thing this way round. About there. Give it a quick of a check with the eye, and that doesn't look too bad in terms of a centre point. So the reference I'm going to use, or stylize or style this on, is this book here, which is actually, well, a bit too close, but that's the sort of picture we're going for. The book I'm showing is actually called The Battle of Marathon, and I picked this up when I was fortunate enough to visit the Athens Museum, and specifically the Museum of the Acropolis and the Parthenon. Fantastic museum, absolutely, probably literally one of the best I've ever been in, I think. This book is quite a weighty tome. Obviously, it's about the Battle of Marathon, but it's got a lot of historical referencing, and there's plenty of pictures and of artifacts and friezes. So it's a really good reference book, full stop. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the chap's name, but obviously it's a Greek gentleman. So if any of you are interested in it, I thoroughly recommend it. If you take a trip to Athens, no trip should be complete without a visit to the museum. So I'm going to leave that to one side so that I can just keep an eye on it. Now, again, this is one of those shields where it's not entirely proportionate, i.e., we're not doing a cross or something which is easy to measure. But what I am going to do is have a little look at what the proportion is on this shield and how big the actual horse is, and then start to use that to aid the representation that we're doing. So on the shield that I'm looking at, it's about an 8 centimetre shield, and the body of the horse is about, well, 3 centimetres out of the 8. So I'm not, do I want to go with that with the tail? So I think for us here, given that we've got 12, if we do maybe 5 mil as our sort of overall length, popping that in the middle there. Now this may not look right because we need to create the impression of the horse. Now this is the horse body that we've got. Excuse me, this is the horse body that I've measured there. So we've got the horse's head coming a little bit higher up. The horse is actually sort of rearing back really, which is why we've got this sort of shape going on. And again, stylistically, what I'm trying to do here is just get an approximation, something for us to work with when it comes to actually doing this properly. The legs are a little odd here in that they're coming out and then going forward, coming out and then going forward. We've got quite a large rear section, and it's already beginning to look a little bit less than I'd like, but never mind. Oh, too much there. Need to create a top bit there. And then we need to create this sort of impression of a wing up here. That's not gone too well. I think I've made it's too watery actually, if anything. But never mind. I mean, hopefully you can see there's enough in there for me to start working with. Once I get rid of some of the, I could actually just dry it, I think, with this. start again. There we go. Get some of the thicker black going on here. Okay, so not not the world's best work, but I'm going to let that dry and then start to create more of a realistic proportion around the body. See you shortly. So whilst that is drying, I'm going to take a little bit of the Foundry Triad. I'm going to use the middle of the Foundry Triad. So this is the 33B. Then I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to try and improve some of these shields up here with, just move those out of the way. Just by taking a little bit of a look at what we've got. And apologies, it's not easy to try and do this and continue a decent video, but here we go. So I don't like how thick this is, and I want to actually, I've decided to take that down there a little bit. The reason I've gone for the B here is that when I put the top white on, I want to create a bit of depth. And contrast. Okay, so we're already seeing a little bit of an improvement there. That's not too bad. Quite bizarrely, I've managed to, despite my measuring, make this one definitely off-center in terms of the shield itself, as you can see that there. So what I might do is take this whole section out here. I said I'm not afraid to be a bit bold with this. So we'll come back to that one and we'll try and widen the actual cup itself and then take that out so that it's proportionately the same, because I'm really not happy with that. This one here, we've got to come back to this one. Let me just get to the right reference part that I'm trying to do. So this bore that I'm doing here has actually got quite a lot of, well, this is a very thin line, and it's a very, so let me get rid of this here. You see already that we're sort of darkening the white, as it were, because I want to be able to go back over this, as I said, and create some contrast. There is, oddly on this one, a little bit of showing through the legs, so I might just do that. We need to bring this back quite a bit actually, so I'm going to just do that, create much more of a snout here. There's also a couple of little sort of lines like this, just to create musculature. We need to create more of a defined head. Let's do that. So, as I said, this isn't necessarily the quickest approach, but I just find that getting a basic shape allows me to start to craft something which is half decent. I'm going to take that out completely. And whilst it's nowhere near the same, you know, if you've ever watched anyone paint a proper picture who knows what they're doing, an artist, oils in particular, they'll work it around until they get the shape and the actual picture that they want. So we're going to leave that one there for a minute. Similarly, let's go back to this here. I suppose it's about now that you're thinking that video on the shield designs using transfers was a much better one to watch, and that's fine. I don't blame you. I like to mix mine when I actually produce a unit. So if I'm in the mood I'll create some shield designs, and if they go wrong, I'll scrub them, overpaint them with white, put a shield design on, a shield transfer, sorry, and then live with it. If I think it's gone reasonably well, and I'm just going to have to reposition myself here to try and see what we're doing, then I'll keep the shield pattern that I've painted, if that makes sense. Just because I like to think that every so often I create something that no one else can have or will have. And to be honest, all of the shield patterns that stem from historical examples, are potentially up for grabs, but it's the way that you paint them. And if you think of some new ones, then so much the better. Whilst I don't do it, if you've got some shield designs, shield transfers that you want to base yours on, there's not really anything wrong with that. So you can always put them on and modify them. I've done that quite a few times as well. Just have a little look at this bird, which is not playing the game in that area there. Let's do something like that. As I said, hopefully this is me starting to convince you that anything can be recovered and that the effort is worth it. But basically, I'm going to carry on round most of them, just doing this as a first start for 10, then seeing how I want to sort of progress. Now, this one we need to think about. It might be too thick, actually, what I've just done there. So have a think about whether that's actually sensible or not later on. Now let's have a look at this bird. Does it look like it could even fly? Not particularly. We've got a nasty bit there. Okay. So, all right, we're getting some sort of progress on some of these. Some of them are going to be quite a few iterations. What I want to show you now is just the first sort of flesh colour on this one. So I'll stop the video, come back, and we'll start that one. Okay, so for me, this is a Foundry 5A series paint. Move these out of the way. And these, believe it or not, this Gorgon was painted, with a flesh tone in the vast majority of cases. And we're going to come back and put some sort of jowl lines on and things like that, but just for the time being, I want to run around this a little bit. Again, this is about creating some structure to what we're actually doing here, giving ourselves a reference to work with. That's mostly up there going to be hair, but we do actually want to do that. Put a little line up there. Okay. Yeah, not sure what that looks like on the camera, but we're getting there. And at least this one is unlike this one. This one is nicely balanced. So put that to one side, let that dry again. I don't know why, but I do find it much easier to do little bits on each shield, build it up. I think that's the way that I don't really lose sight of where I am overall. And by trying to push it too much on one shield at any time, that's when I seem to go wrong. So I'm just going to switch paints and start sketching out some designs on these ones. I'm going to use the Foundry 36B again, but perhaps in a slightly more watery form. But I'll see you in a moment.